From the Rademacher Hills to Bee Mountain and the mighty Sierras, Ridgecrest to Inyokern and China Lake, this is your news for the Indian Wells Valley with the KZGN News Crew.
Hello everyone, welcome to the KZGN-TV News. Tonight we have a special segment. Al and Robert are interviewing Shannon Grove, our Assemblywoman from Sacramento. Tomorrow night I'll return with the regular news.
Hello folks, and welcome to Ridgecrest Talk, the Thursday night edition, which may actually air Monday. We don't know yet, so stay tuned. Today, we're honored to have with us our Assemblywoman, Shannon Grove. Thank you for being with us. We appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
I have a little thing here. My memory is terrible. I'm 66, so I think I might have Alzheimer's coming on. I don't know. But I'd rather read it to make sure that I'm correct here. I was reading up on you to prepare for this meeting with you today, and I came across a speech that you gave last October at a day of renewal in Central Valley.
Okay.
And I thought it was refreshing to hear you say that when legislators pass laws that affect our families, it's not good for our citizens. And when they pass laws that destroy jobs and economic security, it's not good for us as citizens. And you said, as Christians, we are called to be salt and light to the world. You talked about a legislator then who was a deacon in her church and how she had voted for every abortion bill and did it because she was afraid to stand up against the legislation. You said we need to hold our legislators accountable. And again, it was so refreshing and inspirational. We need legislators like you. And legislators who will protect our property rights, one of the most valuable assets we have. And then I recalled in the Bible, you may recall also, about King Ahab when he took Naboth's vineyard in order to have it, and he did it forcibly, and how God reproached him and his descendants for doing so. And then here in our valley, we're facing the loss of property rights because of legislation. So it's hopeful when we hear from legislators like yourself who are willing to fight the good fight. And we thank you so much for standing up for people's rights. And speaking of that, we had a bill last year called the Groundwater Sustainability Act.
Yes.
And you voted against that.
Yes.
Why?
Well, first of all, it was a process. What you have in Sacramento is traditionally bills should go through a process where they go to committee. Public comment has the way to comment on it. There's a lengthy process so both sides can be heard. With the Groundwater Sustainability Act and many bills that go through at the end of session, you vote on bills where language is not yet available. It's the idea or the discussion of what's going to be in the bill.
Vote on it first, and then you can read it.
Kind of like the Democrats did in with Obamacare. Let's pass it so we know what's in it.
Right.
That's the same thing that just happened on Thursday with the drought relief package. It didn't become available in print until about 6:30 in the morning. It didn't go through a policy committee. They spent about $1 billion, and then now today, 2 days later, we find out that about $700 million of that money is for flood control when we're in the middle of a drought, and it uses 2006 money. So do we need to really spend the money? So mainly it was a policy issue. The bottom line is that I'm really trying to, especially on significant issues with water, with oil, with jobs, with economic security, things like those, I'm not going to vote for things that I don't know what's there. And so that was one of the main things that it wasn't in a policy proceeding. There wasn't a policy
it's
proceeding.
A given that we're in a drought, and that even here we have issues concerning water, and everybody believes that we should look at that and get good data. So
most of the time we wouldn't be in the position we're in if it wasn't for bad water policy. Mm-hmm. When you look at just in 2014, they shipped 1.2 million acre feet of water out into the ocean. That's enough for 600,000 acre feet of farmland and 3 million homes.
Right. For bait fish.
For bait fish. And a coalition of environmental groups and our cattle ranchers and farm groups joined together to file for an emergency distribution of water per se to the Central Valley and to the down south. And one water board official, Tom Howard, vetoed that and said, no, we're not doing that. And what we asked for was, when we had the rainfall in January and February, or December, January, for an emergency 2,000 acre feet per month for the months of January and February, and it was denied. Even though we had environmental groups as well. And they were mainly afraid, the water board was afraid of a lawsuit from the Environmental Defense Fund.
That $1 billion the bill that they just passed for the drought, you were quoted in there, you were hopeful that a lot of this would be used for water banking.
It's not. The language did not come out that way. It's over 2/3 of that was for flood control.
Mm-hmm.
A small portion of it was to provide food for families in farming situations where people have lost jobs and don't have access to food, and a very small portion of it was given to some of the communities where right now in our valley, some of our communities are operating in third world countries where they turn on a tap and water doesn't come out. So a small portion of that was for that. I think it was 31 million. You have to check my number, but it's a very small portion compared to the 2/3 that's going for flood control.
Amazing. And was this East Porterville that was...
East Porterville is one of the communities that's struggling very difficultly with water, but that doesn't mean that the entire 31 million, I think it's 31 million, but it doesn't mean that entire dollar amount will go to Porterville.
Okay.
So hopefully this community can get a few nickels to help us in our water situation here.
You do have a water situation here.
Do you have any other bills that you're working on that might have to do with property or water?
So not so much property and water. We have a few bills that are still alive. We've submitted a 2-year budget bill. Instead of struggling with a budget every year and having people not be able to plan for budget issues, we submitted requesting that the government operate on a 2-year budget cycle, doing budget 1 year and policy the next. We've also submitted in the budget process zero-based budgeting, meaning that just because somebody upgraded their computers for $5 million doesn't mean that they should automatically get the 20 or 15% increase on that one-time expenditure. But that's how it works now, is that they automatically get an increase over the previous year's budget regardless of what was in it. So maybe they phased out some people, or maybe they phased out old equipment and now they don't need that much money.
I used to work for the federal government, and it's not so much today, I understand, but I worked for them for 38 years, and come October every year, they'd have, we didn't spend all this money.
Better
you got to
spend
find
it.
a way to spend it.
Right. Or you don't get it again.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're trying to eliminate that and let them, start at zero, and then tell us what they need for staff and operations and new budget expenditures, new equipment or whatever, but not end up in a situation just because you have money in your budget, you have to spend it because therefore you won't get it next year.
Right.
So it's more reason. So I have that bill, and then I also have a bill that is going to reduce tax penalties for employers. If you are an employer and you mail your tax deposit in and it's postmarked by Tuesday, and if it takes 10 days to get to the state, that tax deposit is not considered late. But because of the way the bank transacts business, if you do not settle that same tax deposit, if you do it electronically by 3 o'clock, then it's considered late. So you settle it at 3:07.
We have to go to a break here. I really hate to cut you off.
That's okay, you asked.
We have to do it. So join us after the break.
Welcome back. We're here again with Shannon Grove, our Assemblywoman, and you were talking about bills that you were working on, and you left off with one on...
So basically the tax deposit, it's a tax deposit. So if you mail it, it can get there 10 days later and it's not late, but if you do an electronic deposit, if it's not post or date stamped by 3 o'clock the day that on that Tuesday particularly, then it's considered late. And there's a 10% penalty. So why not just mail it? And other than large corporations, large tax depositors are required to. So basically, because it is not late technically, because you'd have till midnight to pay it, the offense is repealable, meaning that you can write a letter and you get your tax money back, the penalty back on the tax dollars. And so we introduced a bill that said that as long as it settles, as long as it's done by the postmark of the midnight by that day, like midnight on the 15th, then you're okay. And so we did that to help alleviate some costs there. And then we have a PAGA bill, a Private Attorney General Act bill, to offer employers a cure. Right now employers are being sued, and the penalties are very severe, $100 per paycheck per employee per every pay period for not having a date correct on your paycheck stub. So the attorneys, trial lawyers are coming in and using that hammer to settle cases for large dollar values, and it doesn't benefit the employee or the business or jobs, because some businesses are closing down. Several have closed down and are moving to Texas and Kern County.
Yeah,
and
we have a problem with keeping business in this state.
So it's try to give, you have 33 days to fix your error, and hopefully the business will fix their error that they didn't know they were making. I had one employer that was paying bonuses. If you pay a bonus, it has to be calculated into overtime wages instead of being paid as a bonus. So now they're not paying bonuses anymore because that has to be calculated into a wage. And if that attorney sues based on that, you could be severe penalties. Yep. So we're trying to stop those things.
It's interesting. When you lower the taxes, you actually get more revenue.
They don't understand that concept in Sacramento. There is a service tax going through the building that your attorneys, your hairdressers, your lawn service, you will pay taxes on that. They estimate it'll raise $11 billion. They also have bills going through the building that are going to increase minimum wage up to $13 an hour. And they also have what's called a Retailer's Employees Bill of Rights, that you can no longer effectuate someone's schedule that works for you in the retail industry, like Macy's, Mervyn's, anything like that, unless you give them 2 weeks' notice to change their schedule.
Wow. Well, I happen to know somebody that works for one of those type of stores, and that's one of the problems they have. They don't get enough hours, for one.
Those aren't my bills, yeah.
But the hours are not set, and this person has to work 2 jobs in order to survive. And neither of these employers are willing to work with them on
setting a schedule.
Yeah.
Well, if this law passes, they'll have to set their schedule 2 weeks in advance.
Wow.
And that will be a struggle for the employer side of it. What if somebody calls in sick? What if somebody goes to vacation? You can't call someone in. There's a penalty. I believe it's an increase in wages for the penalty.
Wow. That's good.
And then there's the right to die bill. That bill is there. You have it's that whole thing that centers around Brittany Maynard having to go to Oregon to take that capsule pill, and so her family is testifying in support of this bill for the right to die here in California.
Wow.
So there's a few things going on in the Capitol.
Certainly are. Certainly are. Didn't you have a bill relative to water banking, or am I misunderstood? Did I miss?
Nope, I don't have a bill for water banking.
Okay. She talked about it, though, with being hopeful on this $1 billion before you actually got to see it.
Yeah.
But I thought I must have been
if the bill, if there was so when the bill came around a week before we actually saw the language, we didn't see the language till Thursday, but when the discussion started and we knew it was coming, they talked about water banking, they talked about infrastructure, they talked about dams, they talked about being able to store water storage, and then when the bill actually came to print, 2/3 of that $1 billion was for drought relief. Or not drought relief, flood control.
Flood control.
Flood control.
You have your rules in the House and the Senate there. Why can't they make a rule that you don't bring any legislation to a vote until the representative...
There is a rule. There is a rule, and it says you can't do that, and bills have to be in print for a certain length of time, and you can't change them, and the public has the right.
They suspend the
rules.
They
suspend the rules, they violate the rules, and then they reinstate the rules. And they do that with 41 votes, and they have 52. They meaning the other side of the aisle.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, what have you got planned for while you're down here today?
Today we're speaking at the American Legion. I'm the first female veteran on the state assembly floor. So we are speaking at the American Legion Day honoring veterans. And then we have to go to Fraser Park this evening, or not have to. We're going to go to Fraser Park this evening and do a community feed. And then we're dropping the green flag in Taft tonight for the race.
Oh.
So we have a full circle in the district on the outside edges.
And you just came from, you said,
Lake Isabella, the fishing derby. And then you guys have a water issue here locally you wanted to talk about. I'm like, you guys are like, we got like 4 minutes. Come on.
I know. Well, when this first came about, the whole water issue, even going back to last year, it reminded me of Rahm Emanuel statement he made some time back about you never let a good crisis go to waste.
There's truth to that statement.
Yeah, but what is being proposed, I believe, by the state in some respects, and in particular what the county's doing here, I think is a knee-jerk reaction. We would like the county to hold off till they, one, have better data or look at all the data that is available, and two, it seems like they're putting the cart before the horse with respect to these GSAs that are supposed to be coming on board to deal with this issue.
It is a local issue, and I think that Lorelei and the county and Mick and the county board of supervisors are addressing this issue with public comment. So what they did is they put something out there, public comment, which is good. It's good for the public to comment.
Yeah.
So public comment comes from, that's how government's supposed to work. You know, you're in Sacramento, you have public comment, nobody listens to the public. So, you know, they just vote against the public all the time. But you have public comment, and because of that public comment, there's been adjustments in how the county first came about and the original language that was about, because I believe it started out with a moratorium on land for agriculture use.
It did.
That is no longer the case because of public comment coming together. So now they're addressing the concerns that they have with small land use owners. They're addressing the concerns with rotating crops. And so all of this public comment is very good in order to establish the government that the people want.
Absolutely true.
And it needs to remain a local control, because if the county does not act, the state will, and it will not be me.
Oh, we understand
It will be the
that.
San Francisco
But
and
we
Los
believe-
Angeles legislators.
We believe the Todd report, which they're basing a lot of their opinion on, is flawed. And so
Well,
do a
it's
lot
not-
of other people.
But there are people that believe that report is valid, and there's also overwhelming evidence that the basin that we have here in the Indian Wells Valley is the significant one is being dramatically reduced, even with all the conservation that the citizens of this community and the Navy have put forth,
But it's been being reduced for over 70 years.
and it hasn't been addressed.
Right, because there's a huge reserve of water already down there, over 2 million acre feet. And that's what the Navy has touted. Navy's presented to the BRAC
Well,
Commission.
we wish we had more time, but we're out of time. We appreciate you coming
Thank
by
you.
and talking
my
to us
pleasure.
today.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
We appreciate
Thank
it, and we'll be back after this break, and we'll talk a little bit more about water. So join us.
And welcome back to the final segment of Ridgecrest Talk for today. Our special guest, Assemblywoman Shannon Grove, had to leave, so Al and I will continue with a discussion about water. You got anything specific you want to say?
Just to remind people that next week, the 1st, next city council meeting, Lorelei Oviatt will be over here again from the planning department to give a presentation to the city council on this land management plan and where they are in it, because it has evolved.
Yes, it has.
It has changed from the initial document on what the county intended to do, and it's still an opportunity for you to come and speak at that meeting and give more public input on this process to try to modify it even more, or my
Hopefully kill it.
yeah, stop it.
Yes.
And because there are other ways to approach our water issue. The GSAs can actually come in and limit the amount of pumping that is done by farmers or, even the water district. So,
And you'll also have an opportunity. The Planning Commission will be here, the Kern County Planning Commission will be here on August the 9th.
no, April.
April the 9th, and I believe it's 7 o'clock that it's going to start.
Yeah, that
They
will be
didn't
in
want
the
to start
evening.
at 6.
6
and
or
so you'll
7.
have another opportunity to make your input there. My biggest concern is that I think that they're going to ring a bell that they're going to wish that they could unring. And the reason I say that is, and I've written about this, I don't believe we have a water crisis. Do we have a concern about water? Absolutely. But there's a huge difference between those two. And the Navy has said repeatedly, they have told the world in the BRAC process that we have 160 years of water in this valley. And they presented that as, under penalty of perjury, certified as true and accurate to the best of their knowledge. And we have a lot of people, former mayors, members of the Board of Directors of the Indian Wells Valley Water District that have said that, not recently, that was in 2005, but also in 2012, the Navy EIR said essentially the same thing, 160 years of water. I was talking with the mayor here recently. She said 2 million acre-feet of water is what we have in reserve in this valley. We've been overdrafting for 70 years, so there's no reason for people to think that there's a crisis. Obviously, at some point we will run out of water, but I don't think the approach is to attack private property rights, change people's zoning when they may have plans relative to how they're going to use the property.
People bought those properties with the understanding that they had the rights to do what they're doing or want to do. There is some property out there owned that's undeveloped. You know, somebody on the base that's working and they buy the property and their plan is to retire out on that property, do a little, you know, build their retirement home, do a little farming, ranching, whatever. Now, the county's taken that away.
Now, it may be, I have heard that they're going to not rezone any A or A1 property that is 20 acres and smaller. That certainly is a step in the right direction.
Sure is.
The part that concerns me here is if we keep going with we have a water crisis, I think that's going to interfere with the mission of the Navy. I think it's going to not be a good selling point to bring new employees, new bright minds.
Yeah, why would you move to an area that's declared there and you know, they don't have enough water?
Right, and why would businesses move to an area where you don't have enough water? And so I think that they should be rephrasing their what they have to say, and if they could back down the rhetoric and just talk about we have to make sure that we're prepared, or excuse me, that the GSA prepares this valley to have sustainability at 2040 or 2050, but in the meantime, we do have plenty of water. And it's not me saying that, it's me repeating what the Department of the Navy has said, what the Indian Wells Valley Water District has said, what report after report after report, except of course the Todd report, says. And the Todd report is at odds with the preponderance of evidence that exists in this valley.
Even those people who believe that we are, you know, have a severe issue here are not buying into what the Todd report is saying. They believe it's flawed.
And remember, the Todd report was commissioned and paid for by the county. And the other items that I'm talking about here are all either Department of the Navy, or there's also the David Williams report done for the Colorado School of Mines that says that we have 46,000 acre-feet of recharge per year. That's a lot different than the 7,000 to 12,000 that they're talking about. And so we need to slow down here, get better or additional scientific data, and really establish what is going on relative to the water, what we need to do, and then go do that, but in a slow, methodical, proper fashion. Let's not put out there that we're running out of water in this valley. That doesn't help anything, and it certainly defeats the mission of the Navy.
You know, I'm wondering, what the reaction of some people are going to be with the recent mandate by the state to only water twice a day.
It's coming to Ridgecrest citizens.
And the water district has got a plan where you can only water every other day. I'm wondering what some people here in Ridgecrest are going to have to say about that. You know, it's like, go after those nasty farmers, but leave my lawn and everything
leave my lawn alone.
No. Let's see what people have to say.
Yes.
We're just about done here. We appreciate you viewing us, and we want you to come back next week. We'll have more on this issue of water. I don't know yet for sure who our guest is going to be. Sometimes it's last minute with us because we have people like Shannon Grove or a council person or the director of the water district, people that are kind of busy, and it's hard for them to schedule time. So join us next week. We'll talk again more about water, and don't forget the meeting next Wednesday, City Council. Be there.
That's right.